use it to try and put the Democrats back in control.
Yo, okay, this is going to be a long one, and there's going to be two of them, and I might get in trouble. Because exposure and copyright stuff, but I think that they want to get the word
Continue
out.
straight onto I-35 North.
So I think that it's going to be all right. We're coming through San Antonio. It's October the 23rd. And I'm just going to say, who's the deep state?
Keep left to stay on I-35 North.
And then who is, this is the real question. Like, we know that they use diversion. We know that they use psychological
Continue on
warfare.
I-35 North for 26 miles.
We know they use psychological strategies to hurt the public one way or another. So, you know, they split us on lines of race, sexuality, religion, all this other kind of stuff. But, like, who's doing it? They'll say, oh, the globalists. Who is that? Who's doing that? Why does an American flag have a yellow ribbon around it? That's a good question. I'll let you look that up for yourself. Google it. Why does the American flag have the yellow around it? And then, like, what happens when you go in a courtroom? And what's all this maritime law stuff and all this other kind of stuff? And you just get way out in the weeds real quick. But it's true. And they want you to feel like some kind of tinfoil hat guy to dismiss the reality of what you're living in. Okay, the reality of what we're living in is we're Americans, we're working, and they got us by the nuts, and we're trying to get away from them. And if somebody holds your nuts and you try to pull away, there's going to be some pain. You know what I'm saying? But if you just give up at the first little bit of pain, instead of getting away from them, well, they can freely squeeze your nuts some more. And I ain't exaggerating at all. And that should sound as painful and gross, disgusting, and yeah, like, don't let nobody grab your nuts. The old nut twist. Anyway, sorry. So, like, this is a terrible intro to some very serious stuff. Yeah, let's see if we go to prison.
So there's a new Harvard poll out that shows that 65% of Americans want the Democrats to end the shutdown. And a whole lot of pro-Trump commentators are going to town and celebrating the political hit the Democrats are taking. Here's how the National Republican Campaign Committee covered it. But here's what they're not telling you. They're not telling you what's buried in the rest of the poll data. And if you miss that, you will miss how the globalists are going to use it to try and put the Democrats back in control in 2026. And their plan includes a sophisticated psychological warfare campaign being run by the top levels of the British elite. Now, it is true that Donald Trump is owning the Democrats right now on the shutdown. But the shutdown will be resolved sooner or later. And for now, the Democrats will take the hit. But we are still a long way from November 2026, and the empire has a plan. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've tracked American political developments for over 50 years, including spending more than a decade in Washington, D.C., working directly with Congress. And what you see on the surface there, the headlines, the press conferences, the hearings, they don't tell you the real story. The real story is being written by the British imperial elite, who are orchestrating a sophisticated psychological warfare campaign to break apart Trump's winning coalition. Now, if you're getting a sense that this is going to be a different take than what you're hearing elsewhere, please like and subscribe. But here's a taste of what they have in store. This is a headline that the Liberal Patriot hopes you will see in 2026. Rust Belt insurgents clinch Democrats' House takeover. Repair blue wall. Now that's their fantasy, but it's based on a very real strategy to systematically dismantle the coalition that delivered Trump's historic victory. Not only are we going to expose this strategy, but we're going to show you how to defeat it. So in today's update, I'm going to look at these two key elements of their plan. First, how they will try and recapture the blue-collar vote in the swing states and turn it into Democratic votes. And second, how they're using a classic British divide and conquer strategy to ignite religious tensions within Trump's movement. So let's look at that hidden data in that Harvard poll. Yes, 65% want the Democrats to end the shutdown. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that the number one issue on people's minds is inflation by a very wide margin. 43% say it's issue number one. The next issue comes in way down at 12%. So inflation is the number one issue, and this is what the Democrats plan to do with it. The poll found that 55% think it is Trump's policies that will make inflation worse, with only 29% thinking Trump's policies will decrease inflation. Look at that big blue blob on that chart. That's the 55% that think Trump is going to make inflation worse. Now, polls are notoriously easy to rig. And if anyone doesn't think a poll coming out of Harvard has a political bias, they haven't been paying attention to Trump's smackdown of that university. But out in the real world, we are running into inflation fears in our organizing out in the streets and at political meetings. And we heard it yesterday in a very interesting place from a Republican staffer on Capitol Hill. Now, Promethean Action has sent a team of organizers to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of Congress and their staff and to discuss the importance of Trump's full economic policy. I received a report from the team last week which does confirm that it is tough out there. A staffer in the office of a conservative Midwestern senator described how small businesses in their state are being slammed by tariffs because they can't yet get parts made in the United States, and that farmers are also reeling while trade deals are in flux. And that explains why the Harvard poll also showed that 58% think Trump's tariffs policies are hurting the economy. Now again, put in a big grain of salt there on polling, but it is true that not enough Americans understand how and why tariffs work. The British financial oligarchy knows this is a vulnerability. The Financial Times, which has been the mouthpiece of the City of London for over a century, is already preparing the narrative, as you can see. They say the U.S. president cannot prevent the pain of his protectionist agenda indefinitely, and the midterm elections are looming. And they've played up Republicans' concerns about tariffs, with this headline about Ted Cruz warning that tariffs risk sparking a GOP wipeout in the 2026 elections. Thanks, Ted. But why is this so important? A critical part of the MAGA coalition that won in 2024 is blue-collar workers. We saw historic shifts into Trump's column. And those headlines show that the British are tracking this very closely and trying to pull off that key part of the MAGA movement. Now, Democrats, especially in the Rust Belt, are being told to exploit that. The Liberal Patriot profiles some Midwestern Democratic congressional candidates who are steering away from the most radical, woke, and open border policies of the AOCs and the Gavin Newsoms. These Democrats are running on the message, well, even if you like Trump, and probably even if you still hate us, his economic policies aren't yet helping you and you're hurting. But stop and think about it. Who's delaying Trump's policies from taking effect? Well, number one, the Federal Reserve, which has held back on lowering interest rates and which continues to starve productive investment in favor of financial profit. Two, the courts, where Obama and Biden appointed judges are waging warfare against his economic policies, especially tariffs. And pretty much all of the Democrats in Congress, plus a few of those libertarian-leaning Republicans who are still infected with British free trade ideology. Now, despite all of that sabotage, Trump's policies are working. Shovels are in the ground, manufacturing is coming back, investment is starting to pour in. Promethean Action's organizers are delivering that message to Congress with a bang. By the end of the week, every office will have received a copy of our new flyer, and we'll put a link to it in the description. But we are also finding that even among the president's Republican supporters, few understand the truly revolutionary nature of what Trump is doing. that he is reviving the American system of economics, which prioritizes production and growth, not the financial speculation and accounting of what is properly called the British system. So we and you have a big job to do in Congress and with the American people. That is why joining Promethean Action is so important. We're here out there to educate and organize, whether it's from the halls of Congress or to Main Street. So please subscribe or become a paying member so that we can expand this activity. But the effort to peel off Trump's blue-collar support is just one front. There's a more sinister front emerging. And it features none other than George Soros and the British deliberately trying to create religious schisms in the Trump movement. Right at the moment when Trump is proving that such deeply embedded conflicts can be overcome with his breakthrough peace plan in the Mideast. This is psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. So on the one hand, you have the British continuing their drumbeat, claiming that Trump is anti-Semitic. As Barbara outlined on Monday, The Guardian attacked Trump as being anti-Semitic for calling for an investigation of George Soros. So keep track here. They're saying Trump is anti-Semitic. On the other hand, you see the crescendoing coverage by many influencers in the Trump universe claiming that Trump and his administration are run by Netanyahu and the Jews. We get this every week in comments to our videos in our live Q&A sessions. And if people are falling for it, they haven't been paying attention to what we've developed about how the British put the Jews up front to cover for their crimes. But that's not all. The Psy Warriors are also whipping up anti-Muslim sentiment in the United States. They're using, in particular, a recent incident where the super-liberal mayor of Dearborn, Abdullah Hammoud, publicly told a non-Muslim resident that he wasn't welcome in Dearborn. That is blown up on social media, and the narrative that the Muslims are taking over is off and running once again. Now, what's truly diabolical about this operation, this is all being fueled by forces outside of Dearborn. One of the major political forces which shapes the narrative in Dearborn and stirs the pot is a nonprofit called Engage, which bills itself as a Muslim political and civil rights organization. Well, guess what? Engage is substantially funded by George Soros's Open Society Foundation. And that's not all. One of the other foundations which provides major support for Engage features one Baroness Mary Goody of the British House of Lords on its board. And don't forget, this is the same House of Lords which deemed Donald Trump an existential threat to the U.S.-UK special relationship back in 2018. So think about this for a moment. The nominally Jewish George Soros is funding a left-wing Islamic organization that's feeding into an atmosphere of sectarian tension in the United States. Meanwhile, intelligence Psy operatives are simultaneously fueling both anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim sentiment designed to split apart the very coalition that delivered Trump's victory, especially here in Michigan. This is exactly how the British maintained control over India for 200 years. They funded different religious and ethnic groups, playing them against each other. They did it in Ireland with Protestants and Catholics. They did it in the Middle East with Arabs and Jews. And now they're doing it in America with the very MAGA coalition that threatens their global financial and political control. So there you have it, the real story behind the Harvard poll that has so many celebrating. Yes, the Democrats are getting crushed on the shutdown right now, but that's just the opening act in the battle for 2026. What I've shown you today is the empire's two-pronged assault on the coalition that delivered Trump's historic victory. First, they're betting they can convince working Americans to abandon economic nationalism at the first signs of pain. Globalists themselves are deliberately inflicted. Second, they're running the oldest trick in the imperial playbook: divide and conquer, trying to split Muslims, Christians, and Jews apart, when Trump is proving that such unity is not only possible, but it can solve conflicts that have been fanned for centuries. Now, here's what the globalists don't count on. You, an awakened American population that understands their game, which is why you should subscribe to Promethean Action's newsletter. Because when you know their strategy, you can defeat it. When working Americans understand that the economic transition will have growing pains, but that's the only path back to prosperity. They won't be fooled by desperate Democrats promising quick fixes that will lead right back to decline. When Americans of all backgrounds see through the manufactured religious tensions, they won't take the bait. The 2024 coalition wasn't just a political victory. It was a revolution. Blue-collar workers, young people, urban minorities, Muslims, Christians, Jews, united around economic nationalism and peace. That coalition is still there. It's still strong. And if we stay informed, stay united, and keep our eyes on the real prize, rebuilding America as a manufacturing superpower, no amount of British psychological warfare can break it. The empire may be playing for 2026, but we're playing for the next century. So stay focused, stay mobilized. This has been your midweek update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.
So, yeah, if you're going to take over the earth for Jesus, it's very appropriate to pay attention to people that cut through the nonsense, call a spade a spade. Man, the city of London, bro, like, did people think they just gave up? Talking about some chameleon shit right there, man. Dang. So that's real good to pay attention to. There's another one on here. You got another one? I thought it was cool too, like, we're trying to make it through this traffic, and, the traffic's because they're making an elevated highway to put another, 10 lanes on this highway that's elevated. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I call Texas the land of the overpass, and there is a substantial, like, for the last 6-8 years, there's been a substantial building of these buildings. I'll put it on here, I don't know how many times, where they're getting ready. And I'm like, I don't know why they're building all these buildings. Well, they're building all these buildings because they're going to have a lot of manufacturing. And there's a lot of manufacturing that we don't want to do because we're kind of fat and lazy. And with these, people start getting hungry, they're going to get pissed off and everything like that. You take away the baby's binky, and it gets a little fussy, you know what I'm saying? So there's all these different pressures. I mean, even the farmers, like when Trump, he pissed off, what's his name? It talks funny. He said something about the way somebody handled COVID. You can see through the background, like, what do you mean? That was all fucked up. But you got, man, like, he's trying to take over the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain ways you go about things, and then there's, setting up shit that'll last 100 years. You know what I mean? You gotta know who you're fighting, you gotta know their strategies and what they're up against and stuff like that. And to manufacture stuff that's reliable and affordable, you got to be able to manufacture manufacturing equipment. And the number one part about that is the computers that it takes to run these low tolerance, very close tolerance manufacturing machines. So, you can throw a crap ton of money at this deal and, get a few real high-end stuff and all kind of, whatever. Or you can, make it widely available. You know what I mean? And then if my mom worked in a chicken plant, you don't need some person doing that. You know what I mean? And if they had a robot plucking the chicken or cutting it or whatever, and then putting it in a box and stuff like that, yeah, that's going to take away, like 13 jobs. Okay, I have news for you. My mom got carpal tunnel syndrome, and she used to slash chickens at 91 birds a minute. And But there was 3 of them. The line went at 91 birds a minute, and there's 3 of them standing there. And she had to make a hook and cut, and then reach in and pull something out a little bit for the machine to do the whacking. And she could just, you know what I mean, and catch every 3rd bird for 10 hours straight with a knife with a blade that long. And I still have several of those knives. And substantial practice with those knives. You gain a certain reps and sets. We'll just leave it there. With reps and sets, you can autopilot most tasks. So once you got good at this part, and the next part, and the next part, and this part of the chicken plant was called evisceration. Say it with me, folks. Evisceration. Okay, so you got these global powers, this House of Lords and City of London, and all this other kind of stuff. And then you got Trump out there, and he's over in Egypt, talking about peace and stuff like that. He straight up said he's like, pardon Netanyahu. And Netanyahu ain't going to go to prison. There's no reason for him to keep fighting. If they can't throw that dude in prison, he don't have to keep stirring up a stink to stay in power, and then he can go away. You know what I mean? So, like, you got a greater good this deal, and, did the guy get away with it? Okay, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Is there, like, less people exploding? You know what I mean? I mean, for every one of them that die, there's 12 new terrorists or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's stupid. It's a self-perpetuating situation, and them some bitches know it, man. They've been running the world for a long time, and they think they own that shit. That's why they call it the House of Lords. The Lord is a possessor. Those people that are these globalists or whatever else like that. This situation, they think they own you. They don't see no difference in you than they do a tire on a truck. If you blow out, if you get carpal tunnel or whatever else like that, they'll just replace you. They will make money off of putting a patch. You know what I mean? They'll keep you keep you alive long enough with the pharmakeia, freaking treating your symptoms just long enough for the medical system to be brought up and funded and all that. Isn't that why it's shut down right now? They don't want to fund it. They're like we don't want to deal with the symptoms of the poison in the food and the migrants. You know what I mean? Like we're all getting poisoned every day. And then the symptoms of that, when we get old and our body can't fight it off the board, our kidneys and livers messed up, then they give us medicine, and then that also, you're just low dose and poison. Complications. And then we try to find comfort with the chemicals. So they made the problem, messed us up. Now they're giving us some comfort solutions, letting us ride out until they can steal our house via medical debt or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's real. Everybody sees it. It's real. Everybody sees it. It's real, and everybody sees it. But when we see this, war in the Middle East, or the war in the Ukraine, and all this kind of stuff, look, we after hearing that, the British influence, the Dutch that went to England and then later proceeded to float their boat and create these armies and meddle with all these other countries, man, dude, it's completely obvious. It's like, hey, we're going to stir this up. I tell you what it is. It's scalable. So how are you gonna, you know what I mean? If you don't want the inner city of LA that's unloading these boats, they're bringing all their goods, and they got to do this commerce by getting the stuff off the boat and into the country. And you got a bunch of black fellers that are real bulky, and they can go in there and work. You know what I mean? So you got the Mexicans in there, you got the blacks in there, and you got the whites in there. So they'll segregate, you know, birds of a feather flock together type of deal, and they'll pit us against one another, and then certain people will take over in certain spaces, and then as it gets to be bigger, they start self-policing. That's where the Bloods of the Crips come from, right? So then at some point, you got some dude that's like, hey, we can make a lot of money off of you. You guys make shit look cool. So make it look cool to sell drugs and shoot each other. You know what I mean? It's like everybody does a little cocaine. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, it's cocaine, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it really does have an effect on you. Okay? So does like drinking coffee. So does like, you know, freaking, you know, sexual relations or whatever. And then they'll just take it and just make a song about it, make it sound cool. And then they'll, you know, give a small business loan to the gun store on the corner. And it's just like, okay, yeah. So, you know, here's this distribution point. Let's get them all singing songs about selling drugs, shooting each other, and getting laid. And then that affects a whole culture. And now they get caught up, and their kids are caught up, and all sort of kind of stuff. And they never get to relax to where they can look around and see what's going on. Because they're trying to not die. And it doesn't matter if that's the kindergarten playground and you're just like a kid trying to like figure out what to do, or if that's, you know, geopolitics. It's just different scales. There's a book about everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten, and man, they're really building some stuff. Where's the funding for this come from? You know what I mean? With the government shut down and with high interest rates, you know, what about the guy that could have, you know, bought the equipment to set up a batch plant and help subsidize the building of these bridges? You know what I mean? Like you know, he's got his little establishment or whatever like that, and he sets up a batch plant to mix some concrete. These people make all this stuff. You know what I mean? What about that, you know, Sunbelt Rentals right there? You know what I mean? Are they making money? Yeah, they're making money. Look at this rental thing right here in front of us. You know what I mean? So people are doing stuff, and there's movement, and pretty nice Jaguar right there. I'd never owned one though. I'd literally rather have the Ford truck. However, if we the people see what the media is putting out in the mainstream media, and then we take our talking points and say, well, maybe it's this, well, maybe it's that, and apply common sense in a psychological warfare type of situation, the enemy is like, they're going to think this, or this, or this, maybe this. So you got 5 channels, you know. We're always given like, choose black or white, red or blue, whatever. But the reality is, there's generally about 5 paths that people, you know, you can narrow it down. You can paint with a broad brush on the topic. You can pick the 5 most likely outcomes with relative intelligence, and then make sure to manufacture the propaganda to go into one of those channels, and then analyzing the birds of a feather, see which distraction is going to affect which people and all this other stuff. Well, if the long term is American manufacturing, and yeah, we go back to making stuff that don't break. And that's the other thing too, like on a side note, do you think that the Chinese stuff that stays in China is as terrible as the stuff that we buy from China? No, it's not. It's not. Why do you think they were so mad when they're like, turn the boat around and just take this junk back? Because it doesn't fit their specs. Like they can't sell their own stuff to themselves because they know it's shit. You know, you got stateside spec, and then you got export spec in China at every step of manufacturing. You know, you get on this Alibaba and order up some equipment to manufacture some CNC machine. And you can buy this stuff incredibly cheap, and then you get it, it's this machine that's just about wore out, and the critical components are only manufactured there. It's kind of like, you know, you buy a Ford truck, and then you got to buy the parts to keep working on the truck. And the ability to manufacture these plastic parts in metal instead of plastic is incredible capability. And over the long term, unstoppable. And whatever, you know, like you see how Tesla's making the cars with the autoclave, and like I'll take that aluminum down there and they'll just make a whole car. They'll drop this ingot in this thing, do the thing, bring it up to temperature, inject it like a plastic injection mold, and this thing comes out ready to like attach parts and go. And the whole thing's designed off of the manufacturing, and then it's designed to last a certain amount of time before it's replaced. So like if you're running this deal and doing it as a replacement, well, if you step back from that and you go simple and design it to be worked on by the end buyer, that's the difference, man. That's the difference. Like if any automotive manufacturer right now that makes actual work truck, like a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton truck that your average person's going to buy and use on a homestead, if they build one that has no emissions nonsense, that is simple, mechanical, and designed that the individual can do the work to fix it, that anybody can, you know, set the valves, anybody can adjust the timing, anybody can, you know, change the oil, and it's literally designed to be worked on by the consumer. They will dominate. They will dominate. Look at the Japanese model. You know what I mean? They just made super reliability, small and efficient. You can afford to buy it. I would rather have 3 cars I can afford and I know I can work on them, that are simple. I mean, crank windows. Like, why? I don't need an electric motor and the door panel and 4 doors of this car and like a one-touch switch that'll just roll it up, or I can tap it twice to go down a little bit, or I can hold it down to go all the way down or whatever. Like, I can just crank the fucking handle, okay? And if that doesn't work, how long is it going to take for that to not work? What's the chances that electric motor needed a wire or a circuit or a fuse or a whatever? And the complexity built into this stupid window. And there's freaking 4 of them. So it's just, it's retarded is what it is. And they do that. And then people say, you know, like, watch people, you know, uppity and finicky when they're picking out a car. And I mean, they're just pissed off over a ding, a dent, a scratch. And it's like, not that hard to understand the House of Commons, the House of British Lords, or whatever it is, the elites. Because that's human nature. You know what I'm saying? So with that humility and that humble, you know what I'm saying? You get back into that, you put that humility in there, you put some do for your fellow American, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, help with obesity. Give us some crank handles on the window. At least I get a little workout, you know? Right? Let's bring back hydraulic steering. So some computer can't hijack my vehicle and drive me into a pole. You know what I mean? Like, dude, it's just ridiculous, man. It's just ridiculous. It's all set up to get us one way or another. And then knowing for a fact that when the pendulum swings the other way and these some bitches get back in power, when the Democrats get power again, they're going to kill us all. They're going to use the ICE apparatus and all that stuff to round up the Christians and frickin' off with your head. And somewhere between now and then is going to be like tremendous upheaval, and they are going to demand that you sell your soul for a chicken dinner and a shower. So, according to the Bible, you know what I mean? And the Bible's right. So, you know, I mean, that's what's going on. That's what's going on. And to push it out past, there's several things that the Bible explains will bring you more days in the earth. There was a time where a guy was in battle and cried out to God in prayer and asked for more time to win the battle. And the sun stayed in position for an extra 6 hours, which implies that the earth stopped turning for 6 hours, supernaturally. Okay, so I know that's a big leap. I think it's a bigger leap to think that, you know, I could find out how to, you know, thwart the strategy of the entire British Empire. By watching YouTube videos. Oh man, but is that not what God would do? Is that not funny, dad jokey enough to fit the character of the Creator? The guy that became a man and then convinced the church to usher in salvation for everybody. He came here and died for all of us. And the people that killed him, woe unto them. Woe. I say again, woe. But he tricked them into it. And a lot of them genuinely thought that they were doing the right thing. I'm convinced of that as well. So, boy, it's a lot. It is a lot. How long is this thing? 37 minutes. Let's get us another edition in, and then I'll try to put that stuff in the description that lady's talking about. Let's see if we can bring it out. Let's drive up here 20 feet and stop in the middle of the highway again. And, yeah. Okay, so this is going to be real good. This is going to be real good. You'll enjoy this.
Last week, White House Trade Counselor Peter Navarro walked into the Council on Foreign Relations and delivered a declaration of war against the British Empire's control over American policy. And a few days later, Donald Trump signed a rare earth minerals deal with Australia that the mainstream media is telling you is aimed at China. But here's what they're not telling you. That deal is really aimed at dismantling Britain's centuries-old imperial grip on Australia and spreading Trump's America First dominance. Now, not a lot of attention was paid to Navarro's CFR speech. You know, it's just another speech about tariffs and bringing back manufacturing. And as far as Trump's Australia deal, the talking heads will tell you that this is all about challenging China over critical materials. But that misses the deeper strategic reality. The CFR confrontation and the Australia deal are not separate moves. They're two coordinated strikes in the same war against the British imperial system. When you connect these two developments with what's been happening since Trump's return to power, the Mideast peace breakthrough, his challenge to Europe's perpetual war policies, his confrontation with the Fed, a clear strategy emerges. I'm Susan Kokinda, and since the end of the Bretton Woods system in 1971, I've tracked how the British Empire and the City of London reasserted control over the world economy, rebranding it as globalism. And what we're witnessing right now is the first real challenge to that imperial system in the entire post-war era. Most people, including a lot of Trump supporters, often miss the forest for the trees. If you understand how important it is to get above the trees, Please like and subscribe so that we can build our audience and more people will see the forest. So today I'm going to show you how two recent developments reveal Trump's grand strategy. First, why Peter Navarro's speech to the CFR was actually a declaration of war against British control over American policy and the institutions that have enforced it. And second, why Trump's rare earth deal with Australia is aimed primarily at Great Britain and not China. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the real war that's being fought and why the British elite are more terrified now than they have been at any point since the American Revolution. Peter Navarro didn't just give a speech at the Council on Foreign Relations. He marched into one of the most powerful institutions of British imperial control in the United States and punched them right in the nose.
I'd like to thank the Council on Foreign Relations for this kind invitation. After all, it's not every day I get to speak for an audience that has opposed nearly every policy I've ever helped advance in the White House. But let's be honest with each other. CFR has been uniformly anti-tariff and anti-Trump and highly skeptical of an America First foreign policy that in truth is restoring our trade balance, rebuilding our industrial base, strengthening alliances like NATO, keeping, and as we just saw in the Middle East, negotiating a broader peace, and reasserting American sovereignty on the world stage.
Navarro accused the CFR of embodying an ideology that is, quote, comfortably wedded with Wall Street and the multinational corporations that love open borders, cheap offshore labor, and an endless stream of subsidized imported goods. Now, what made this speech even more enjoyable is that the CFR's current president, Michael Froman, was sitting right in front of Navarro. Froman was Barack Obama's trade negotiator and negotiated the infamous Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Navarro went scorched earth on.
Then came the Trans-Pacific Partnership, forgive me here, Mike. CFR sold it as a geopolitical rampart against a rising China, yet the TPP would have surrendered much of America's manufacturing base, including our crucial auto and auto parts sectors, to Japan, Vietnam, and ironically, ultimately, China itself. President Trump saw this very clearly and tore up the TPP on day one, was standing right behind him on that beautiful day. This is what the Council on Foreign Relations has never understood. Weakening our industrial base has never strengthened our strategic position. It has only invited aggression. That's why in Trump world, we do not trade off economic security for national security. We believe economic security is national security. Memo to CFR: you cannot project power if you surrender production. You cannot deter aggression when your supply chains run Europe through its ports. You can't lead the free world if you can't make what the free world needs.
Now, I'll give Navarro a diplomatic pass when he says that the CFR has never understood. They understand exactly what they're doing. Because the Council on Foreign Relations is a creation of the British Round Table, founded in 1922 to smother the American tradition in economics and foreign policy, and to bring the United States back into the British imperial fold. Coming out of World War I, the Round Table spawned two organizations. The British arm, known as the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and it's commonly known as Chatham House. I want you to remember that name. And then in 1922, the CFR, its American arm. The CFR's mission: to bring the United States back into alignment with imperial policy after we had strayed too far after that unfortunate thing called the American Revolution. And the British were largely successful. Most presidents just obeyed. But the presidents who bucked it got assassinated, shot at, Watergated, or couped. Now, one of the things that makes Promethean Action so unique is that we have exposed the British hand in all of this. We wrote the ebook, It's the British Who Murder Our Presidents, and we don't just use brand names like Deep State. we look at the historical and philosophical underpinnings of this fight between the British Empire and the American Republic and how it plays out in economics, statecraft, and culture. Now, a significant part of Navarro's speech focused on America's supply chain vulnerabilities in strategic materials. Navarro contrasted Trump's economic nationalism with the globalists' free trade dogma, as he called it, the same dogma that's made the world dangerously dependent on Chinese processing of rare earths. Now, most people will stop there and think, okay, so this is about challenging China and bringing manufacturing back to America. Well, that's true, but it's not the deeper story. Because a few days after Navarro delivered that speech, Donald Trump gave a demonstration of exactly how he's replacing the British model with the American system. And that's where the Australia deal comes in, but probably not for the reasons you think. When President Trump met with Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in the Oval Office on Monday and signed an $8.5 billion deal to process rare earths and strategic minerals in Australia, the establishment media is focused on that agreement as a counter to China. But I'm going to show you what nobody else is telling you. This deal is a precision strike against British imperial control. Let's start with what the Australian Prime Minister said, because tucked away in his comments in the Oval Office is a key to understanding what's really happening.
Australia has had a view for some time. It's similar to putting America first. Our plan's called A Future Made in Australia, which is about not just digging things up and exporting them, but how do we make sure that we have, across the supply chains, with our friends, being able to benefit and seize those opportunities. So we certainly see part of what this is about isn't just digging things up. It's also about processing, including joint ventures between Australia and the United States.
Did you catch that phrase? Quote, not just digging things up and exporting them, but processing them. And joint industrial ventures between the United States and Australia in Australia. In other words, Donald Trump is offering Australia a partnership
It's a big deal.
based on mutual industrial development, not just imperial extraction. So why is that important? Well, here's a good example. Australia is the world's largest lithium producer, 52% of the global supply, but it produces almost none of it. They dig it up, ship it to China, and then buy back the batteries at a huge markup. Now, China's been kind of late to this game, but this is what the British have been doing for centuries, using political or economic control to extract raw materials, stifle industrial development, and keep countries perpetually dependent on foreign manufacturing. I think that's why we fought the American Revolution. Australia has been in this paradigm, though, for more than 150 years, and for most of that time, it hasn't been the Chinese doing it. In fact, the British have been pretty brutal when it comes to keeping Australia in its place as a raw materials producer. Let me tell you what happened 50 years ago, the last time an Australian Prime Minister tried to exert economic sovereignty over Australian resources. Because what happened to Gough Whitlam in 1975 is key to understanding why this Trump deal is so threatening to London. Australia's natural resources were owned by British mining companies like Rio Tinto Zinc, BHP, and other Anglo-Dutch corporations, which were all intertwined with the British monarchy and the elites. Prime Minister Whitlam had a plan for, quote, resource nationalism, unquote, to give Australia control over its natural resources, to process them in Australia, and to use that wealth for the benefit of Australians. He was also looking to the Mideast to independently finance this, which didn't make the City of London very happy. So the empire struck back. In November 1975, the Crown appointed Governor General, Sir John Kerr, did the unprecedented. He dismissed the democratically elected prime minister and unilaterally installed the opposition leader as caretaker. Tens of thousands protested in the streets, but it didn't matter, because Sir John had used the reserve powers of the Crown to remove a prime minister who threatened British imperial control of Australia's resources. So Donald Trump just offered Australia exactly what Whitlam tried to do: industrial development and economic sovereignty. But here's the difference. Whitlam was trying to do it alone in Australia. Trump is offering American partnership and investment in Australia as part of a broader strategy to dismantle British financial control. Britain can't use the Governor General to fire the President of the United States. They've certainly tried other means, impeachments, the 2020 election, lawfare, assassinations, but because we're a constitutional republic and not a British satrap, they've failed. And now they can't stop it.
See, that all that adds up. Like, this sniff test, the bullshit-o-meter, what that lady just said freaking adds up. That, I mean, it's undeniable. You can't unsee it once you see it. And if everybody sees that, and everybody, like, you know, if we get it, everybody's been hammered on the, you know, the freaking baby boomers were assholes or whatever, you know what I mean? And my generation is like, my kids are fucked up because I failed. Okay? What can I do as a man in 2025 to do right by my kids? Because I didn't get it right. I fucked it up. You know what I mean? I've repented. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to give them a country that's standing on their own 2 feet. And then I'm not going to allow propaganda to be like, oh, well, you know, they're giving money to Australia. Oh man, they're giving money to Argentina. You know what I mean? Like our herd, the number of cattle in the United States needs to increase. So if we got a 5-year deal to buy some cheap beef off of Argentina, the price of eating is expensive, bro. Like, yeah, the farmers are getting a little bit of relief, and then we're strategic. The strategy, we're getting stuff around the world becoming a pivotal partner with these other places. Okay, and you gotta see the real enemy, and you're not gonna fight that. You know, these people are the ones that, you know, they're coming in here and they're making these protests. They're shooting our president. They're tearing us down. I remember when I was a kid, I remember my dad and my grandpa talking about politics. They're like, hey, we shouldn't say that. We shouldn't talk about that. Things happened. I'm like, what kind of mafioso motherfucker are you worried about? Well, it turns out, you know, the British House of Commons and the, you know, you could say the elites or whatever else like that, you know what I mean? Or the globalists or whatever. But it's these people that they think they own us, man. They think they own us. And, you know, whether or not Trump is good, bad, or ugly, or one of them, I don't know. But nobody really believes the fucking story that you're seeing on the TV. Like, I think that declaring the cartels terrorists and then putting the National Guard in there to help out the feds and all this other kind of stuff like that, this whole situation, I think that's the, you know, he is fighting a terrorist group. He really is. Like, that's what Trump is really doing, stateside. Okay, so who's funding this stuff and who's doing these things? And, yeah. Dude, he's called a spade a spade. He's like, if you want to stop the war in the Gaza Strip, pardon Bibi Netanyahu. You know what I mean? If this dude's not going to go to jail, and it's the state of war ends, and he cannot be prosecuted for his crimes, the war will end. Like, that literally is a solution. Now, is it right? Oh, well, fuck no. No. You know what I mean? No, it's not right at all. But what does it produce for my kids and my great-grandkids? You know what I'm saying? There's no point in just crying over spilt milk. Just clean up the mess before it goes sour.
Australia from accepting American partnership. instead of British extraction. Now, there's one more fun fact tying all of this together. During yesterday's Oval Office press session, Trump was asked about Australia's current ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, who had previously called Trump, quote, the most destructive president in American history, a village idiot, and a traitor to the West. Trump shot back publicly in the Oval Office, I don't like you either, and I probably never will. Now, I hope you're not surprised when I tell you that Ambassador Rudd is a senior advisor at Chatham House, the sister organization to the CFR that Navarro just eviscerated. Trump and his team are systematically confronting the institutional network of British imperial control.
Chatham House and the CFR, the Center for Foreign Relations. Same thing. Potato, potato.
So let's connect all the dots. Navarro walks into the CFR and declares their era of policy control is over. 3 days later, Trump signs a deal that restructures Australia's economic relationship away from British imperial extraction and toward American industrial partnership. These aren't separate tactical moves. They're coordinated strikes in the same strategic war. So if you want to have a general's view of the battlefield, you should join Promethean Action's community. Become a paying member or make a contribution so you can build the political army that will execute Trump's policies. Because every move that Trump makes in the Mideast, with Russia or China, on tariff and industrial policy, or against the Federal Reserve, is aimed at dismantling the modern-day British Empire and establishing a world dominated by sovereign nations.
I think that's
The
true.
British elite understand exactly what's happening. That's why we have Antifa in the streets, and Democrats shutting down the government, and neocons on both sides of the Atlantic trying
Both
to keep their
sides.
wars going. Yes, the empire is fighting back, but for the first time in 80 years, they're on the defensive. So join the offense, along with us and with Donald Trump. This has been your midweek update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.
That's PrometheanAction.com. And I was today years old when I found this channel. It popped up randomly on my YouTube. So, right or wrong, good or bad, is this factually accurate? It seems like it is. It seems like it is. Is sovereign nations where you're free as a nation to govern your land as you see fit without the control of foreign people and groups? Is that good or bad? It seems like the less controllable I am by somebody that's not in the United States, it seems like that's a stronger position. And looking down the road, I want my children and my children's children to be able to ride bicycles and stuff like that, you know, like, know how to work on a bicycle and stuff like that. You know, read the Bible and stuff like that, you know. Goodness. I don't see us getting there without spreading. I think spreading what this lady's talking about is very useful to keep people that are at least trying to do the right thing in power. I don't think Trump is perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect. I think that when the opposite side gets in power, when the pendulum swings the other way, there's a good chance they're going to cut my head off. Bible says it. You know, the stars aligned. Like nothing ever before. Exactly the way the Bible says. I don't know, man. What do you think? Put that down in the comments, whatever like that. They got a deal here. I don't know if I can post it on the thing or not, but I will put both videos in the comments. And they got this book you can get for $10. It's called The Police Dossier. It is the British who murder our presidents. Looks like it's worth $20, but you can. Oh, here's the digital thing. Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of stuff. They got just this one little deal that popped up. It's like $10, and then they had some. You know, if you want to just really know everything about it, looks like for a couple $100, you can get all the information, which sounds surprisingly affordable if this is what you're into and what you're doing. And then if we could, I think if you have a mutual assistance group to help them prepare, I feel like they should be made aware of this channel. Not my channel, the Promethean Action. And let's see here. Right. The way they write their name, I can't see how long it is. Is it at Promethean Action? Anyway. I think that lady's right. I really do. I think that's what they're doing. And then if Trump wanted legacy of being the dude that ruled the world, that fits his personality to a T. Like if he really is like, you know what I mean, all y'all, you know what I mean, whether it's love a country or not, just put that to the side. Look at what these people did to this guy. And look at where he's at now. Look at what he's doing. You know, is he going to be successful or not or whatever else like that? I don't know, but it adds up, bro. Like, it's, yeah, the lady's right. This lady talking on this deal is right. She is correct in her statements. And she's also correct. At the beginning of this, you'll see, if you go back to the beginning, and you start studying on the strategy, she lays out the strategy. Apparently she does this once a week on this channel. So, man, if we could get the prepper community and there's like all these people like talk about the news, you know what I'm saying? And it would be great if they would start mimicking what this lady's saying. You know what I mean? Instead of watching CNN, I don't know how many times I get on this deal and like, you wouldn't believe what they said on CNN. Look at what they said. And then they'll play a 15-minute, or excuse me, a 15-minute clip to maybe a full, 45 seconds. Where it's The View or somebody arguing on CNN or whatever. Like, what the hell, man? You're a right-wing, whatever, influencer, YouTuber, whatever. You might have your specialties here, there, and the other, whatever. You know what I mean? Not talking to anybody specific. I can literally think of 16 different people off the top of my head right now that will take topics and talking points and then they'll quote CNN. Oh, look how audacious this is. They said XYZ. And it's like, I don't watch CNN because I don't want that propaganda in my head. Okay? So, is it more likely that the British Empire controls corporations, including telecommunications, and they influence what goes on since World War I? Since the American Revolution, did they want to take this place back over? How much money and how much resources and everything else goes to Europe that got taken away from Canada, United States, Australia, India, China? Like, there's just this overlapping wake, and see what they do and see what their strategy is. And this whole divide and conquer, you know, I want to take it from over here and then manufacture it over here situation to separate resource from the real owner. You know what I mean? Like it's you know, it's diabolical. And I mean, it goes all the way back. You see that meme where the guy's he's like, well, you know, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. He's like, no, take all the lemons, make them scarce. Convince everybody it's the best cleaner, it's the best drink, it's the best this, that, and the other. Then slowly release it to the public at an extreme premium to where to have lemonade, you would have to be, you know, it's a status symbol. He goes on and on. He's like, and then sell off the lemons or whatever. And he's talking about diamonds and the whole process they did with diamonds to make them rare. I said, come on, man. I just bought a blade for my tile saw. I know that diamonds can be had for $20. Yeah, obviously. Anyways. But you can have this one for $11,000 and she'll love you forever. Do you really love her if you don't give her a diamond? It's psychological, man. It's psychological. They're playing, they're toying with your emotions. Oh, man. It's like, well, what should we do? Let's convince this little girl that she's a princess. And then when she gets married, it's going to unite her kingdom with another kingdom. Will establish this whole situation where they're living in this delusional situation where somebody from India is going to cough up $100,000 just for the actual day of events of the marriage. You know what I'm saying? So the next thing you know, you see one of these truck drivers out here, you know what I mean? He's working as an owner op and everything else like that. Well, they done sold him the wore out truck and everything else like that. So he's just busting his ass. And in his head, he's like, if I don't get this right, I won't be able to get a wife and have kids. And, you know, do my thing, you know, hee-haw, durka, or whatever. So they bring this guy over here that'll work for nothing, charge a premium, you know what I mean? Beat me out of having anything substantial because this guy over here will work for next to nothing. And he's got to do it or he can't get kids or whatever. You see what I'm saying, man? It's just, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing all the way around. Now, how are you going to break the back of that system? You know what I mean? You need to get emotional. You know what I mean? Like, I need to insert a clip of Kunta Kinte getting beat down, and it just shows, it just says people. And then the guy beating him is like, what they call it? House of Lords. City of London. Yeah. And then, like, they kill people that speak out against it, right? So, like, if we all speak out, they can't kill us all. Because they're actually riding on our backs. Like, they have to have a war going in Ukraine, going over here, going over there. They have to have, you know, they got to reach out to certain people and be like, you know, hey, we're going to need you on this project because you're the subject matter expert, blah, blah, this and that. Next thing you know, you're on a Zoom call with 35 dudes that represent, you know, all these corporations and stuff, and you're just tasked with, what are you going to do? Blah, blah, you know, situation alpha is happening. And then everybody you talk to after that is, you know, like you're shifting. But you don't know if everybody else on that Zoom call is an actor. You don't know that. You don't know that. How would you know? How would you know? And how would you know, even if they were who they said they was, that they didn't set them up to be in that position? Like, oh, Skip. Well, Skip, we know that Sean Ryan got saved again. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he worked for the CIA, but He's on our side now. He's straight up now. There's no way Tucker Carlson and Sean Ryan are secretly working for the British House of Commons. There's no way. There's no way. And I have no idea to know whether they are or not. That's a case in point. If you're watching this, Sean Ryan, I think you're awesome, dude, actually. And I appreciate your content and stuff. That's the reason why I used you. Like, you should feel respected that I just brought up your name like that, because I wanted it to be audaciously incorrect. But still source, you know, do you know your source? Have you sat down and had dinner with Tucker Carlson? No, probably not, right? So, like, okay. All right, well, this dude sat in the room with Vladimir Putin for sure. And did he fart? That's a good question. It's such a heavy topic as we're talking about right now. We need to bring up a fart joke. Can he stop Putin? That's the question. Does he do it on command? Okay, so my favorite cheese. If you cut the cheese and it's queso, do you notice? Or does it just fold back together? Separate and come back together. Are you talking about cheese or cheeks? I don't know. Hands off, hands off. I know to keep my hands off. Okay, so back to seriousness. Like, Tucker, if you're watching this, man, I hope you got a laugh out of it. And I actually think that you're an American patriot. And I think you and Sean both are Christians. And I can see Bible stuff. And you're running with that. So, hey, cool. And, you know, like, go back to where it says this is a statute forever. And, you know, make sure you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's a description of sin. Sin is missing the mark. The mark is the Torah. So go ahead and read the Torah and act appropriately, knowing that Jesus fulfilled the law of atonement, so we're not going to hell. Okay? But the striving to keep the Torah will make us Christ-like, because Jesus kept the Torah. Okay? Like he was Jewish. He kind of made the whole earth. So, anyways, we see how this freaking synagogue of Satan is going to be, you know, in certain places, whatever. And then we see how the Bible really does explain that they're going to cut our heads off, right? And then the Bible really does say, I think it's in the Proverbs and it's also in some of the Psalms. And there's certain things that you can do to gain favor with God, which will give you a higher quality of life. It will also give you a more lengthy life. Now, did God know the day you would die when you were born? Yes. Did he know the choices you would make along the way? Yes. Is that predestination? No. It's a predetermination because he's watched the movie before. And luckily he did. So he built you, he knit you together in your mother's womb with the attributes that you would need to make it through the movie. So you are the hero in your movie, right? And you're gonna live this thing out to a certain degree. And that's, God made you and gave you opportunity to do that. So all that you do, oh king, hero, person that loves God, you're doing it for, you know, king and country, right? But it's his kingdom, you know what I mean? And I'm going to serve, will be a servant leader, and I'm going to walk in my authority, my God-given authority. You know what I mean? He paid the price. I was bought at a price. Okay, so I'm not scared of the British. The British are coming. The British have been here for a while. And they own everything, and they just trick us with these IOU. It used to be paper. I guess it's just numbers on a computer screen now. I mean, just get your calculator out and just type some numbers out. And look at it and be like, okay, here's numbers on my phone. What's the difference between that and like the banking app? Surprisingly very little. Surprisingly very little. But we all believe in it, so it has power. So we can readily demonstrate that they screwed us. We got screwed over, lied to, and tricked into it. What's that thing about stick your head in the fence? Anyway, probably shouldn't have said that. It is a funny joke. I wish I could tell it right now. So we see what they're going to do. We see the strategy. We see the new overlord trying to take over. Like you got the House of Lords, and Trump is trying to be over that. You know what I mean? And the whole thought of us, somehow being free, is that worth fighting for? Yeah, obviously. So, good or bad, black or white, ugly, clean, whatever, religion, stuff like that. Just like, don't let them divide us. You know what I mean? Like I was delivering a load yesterday, and this real big black lesbian lady was, she cut me off in line or whatever like that. But she's driving around in a semi on a flat tire. So I get out and I walk around there and everything like that, and she won't look at me. She won't roll the window down or nothing. And she thinks it's a road rage kind of situation or whatever like that. And I'm just like, you're driving on a flat tire, and the tire next to it, it looks like it's fixing to bust. So like, if you turn the corner sharp, you're going to break the bead down on the other tire. And she's obviously getting unloaded because we're in the line to go get unloaded. The tire that's flat, it's not just flat. It's off the bead. It's wallered around. I mean, it went from, fix this thing that has a flat to like buy a whole new $700 tire. Anyways, she wasn't hearing it. And then she cut me off and everything. And then she didn't know which way to go or whatever. So when I pulled up, I wound up in front of her in line. So that was funny. And then, so I go in and check in and everything. And then it's a little bit of a walk to the door to check in. It takes a minute to check in, do the song and dance. I'm on my way out when she finally makes her way in. And I'm like, we should all be thankful to Jesus that we're alive. It was what I said. She's just battered down. And then I park in the door where I'm delivering, and then here she comes, and she's got to back in right beside me. Of course, she's having all kind of trouble backing in because she's driving on a flat. So I get out there, one guy's on one side helping her, I'm on the other side helping her, and we get her backed into the spot and everything like that. And I walk around there, and I was like, you're driving on a flat, right? And she's like, you need Jesus more than I do, this, that, and the other. I was like, I have a case of Bibles. Like, do you want a Bible? Well, you're the one that needs to read a Bible. I think she said stink, or no, she called me dirty. She said, you dirty something, and everything. And she's like, well, you wasn't talking like this when you walked around there and blah 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 cussing. I said, ma'am, I didn't cuss at all. I was telling you, you're driving on a flat. And you're obviously blind because, like, you cut me off and stuff, and that's not very professional. And you should probably thank God that you're alive, because if you don't see a 70-foot white truck and you just pull out right in front of it, like, you're, blind. You should be more professional for your own sake. Like, nothing I said was cussing, nor any of it, like, argumentative. It's just pointing out the obvious, whatever. Anyway, she's pretty bad. And then the other guy, he came around the corner there, and I gave him a Bible. And, just do the right thing. And knowing our enemy you know, in that moment. I guess the point of bringing all that up is, you know, your average person that cuts you off in traffic, you get out of the truck, walk up there and talk to them, they think you're bad. They think you're some type of heathen that's going to, you know, cuss, rant, rave, road rage, incident, whatever. Might just be the guy that's like, you know, telling you you're driving on a flat. I seen one where the guy's following the lady or whatever like that, and he's honking and stuff. Finally, she gets caught at the red light, and he pulls up there. She's like, "What? What do you want?" He's like, "Your phone's on top of your car, ma'am." That's what this is. This, let's say it again. Let's say it again. The Promethean Action Group. This is letting the normies realize who they is. Who is they? It's the British. House of Commons. All right, Raquel, go get them.